Is it just me, or have you felt something strange in the air lately? I don't know how to describe it, things just feel off. At least I can escape to Final Fantasy XIV to get rid of this creepy feeling. Oh god. Tonight, we're discussing the most disturbing things in Final Fantasy XIV. I will warn you, this video is rated S for spooky. And spoilers, there's gonna be spoilers. Let's start from the beginning, or the end? Back near the end of 1.0, players that logged off in the in-room could see this nightmare cutscene upon logging back into the game. It depicted the Warrior of Light having a nightmare, with death surrounding them and their lives being threatened, before abruptly waking up, knowing not only did you have a nightmare, you were spooked so much that you rolled out of your bed. I can only imagine the player's reaction the first time they experienced this. I also sort of wish something like this could happen in the live game. Something far more recent, but perhaps even more shocking, was that scene in Shadowbringers. Early on in the Shadowbringers main scenario quests, you meet a kind and good-hearted woman named Tesleen, and in a heart-wrenching moment of heroic sacrifice, things take a turn for the worse. You see, when you die at the hands of a Sin Eater, you become one, and that's what happens here. We see every gruesome bit of the transformation from human to Sin Eater. The messed up part is the devs wanted to go even further with the scene, but decided against that for obvious reasons. In the following dungeon, you can run into Tesleen as one of the middle bosses, and you can see she's still clinging on to her human self. Just look at this death animation. The song Equilibrium isn't only an absolute banger. It tells the tragic story of a family torn apart from war. After the father is slain by the Alligans, the mother starts to abuse the daughter. The daughter then hears voices of Sophia, telling her to murder her mother, thus restoring the balance. After realization of what she's done, the daughter commits suicide, effectively wiping out the family entirely, leaving an empty home down by the sea. I love the slow burn of this terrifying song. It shows Square Enix can do horror without resistance. In the Near Alliance raid, Tower at Paradigm's Breach, players are greeted by a boss by the name of Red Girl. During a point in the fight, she casts Sublime Transcendence, which is effectively a raid-wide damage ability. But this one has an added bonus of hijacking your screen and jump-scaring the pants off of you. Seriously, the first time I did this, I almost leapt out of my seat. What a neat way to implement the weird creepiness of the Nier series into Final Fantasy XIV. Let's take it back to 2.0. and talk about one of the most pronounced and disturbing stories in all of Final Fantasy XIV, the story of Edda the White Mage. Now, you can find more detailed recounts of the story online, but for the sake of this video, I'll keep it brief. When we first encounter Edda, we see her picked on by what looks to be her party in a rather mean-spirited way. The gladiator, Avir, which we'll later find out is her fiancé, gives her the worst of it. Following the completion of Sestasha, we see the party fighting, noting that the dungeon wasn't a successful endeavor and Avir is now dead. The party breaks up, but not before mentioning to Edda that she should stop carrying Avir's severed head around. As time passes, Edda decides to continue adventuring, all while taking Avir's decapitated head with her. You can find recounts of her stories and adventures with Avir and journal entries laying around in different A Realm Reborn zones. Eventually, Edda decides that Avir needs a body, And not just a regular body, powerful body. That's where Tomtara Deepcroft hard mode comes in. Here, Edda uses experimentation and sacrifice of souls to bring Avir back into monstrous form. Just in time for the Warrior of Light to defeat him and send his soul once again to the afterlife. In a moment of complete shock, Edda falls off a cliff into a seemingly endless pit. Story over, right? Well, shortly after, players are greeted with this cutscene. Edda's story goes a little deeper, no pun intended, when venturing into the Palace of the Dead. But to keep it brief, we end up putting her soul to rest after defeating a lich monster. My favorite part happens following the events of Tomtara hard mode. You can see Edda's ghost randomly appearing in the 3 main city-states at nighttime. This is easily the best series of spooky side quests in 14, and I'd love for them to explore the space for more creepy stories. A few more of A Realm Reborn dungeons are pretty disturbing. In the Wanderer's Palace, we run into Final Fantasy XIV's most notorious creepy boys, the Tonberries. These lovable murderers are scattered all throughout the dungeon, but with a twist. As you go through the dungeon, you'll be followed by a giant Tonberry. Failing to quickly progress through the dungeon will result in him catching up to your party and brutally murdering one of the players like you're stuck inside of a cheesy slasher film. The sense of dread when he starts catching up to your party is overwhelming and will have you begging your 0 DPS white mage to start pressing Holy. Before you even unlock Holy, you'll encounter Final Fantasy XIV's haunted house, Haukke Manor. On the surface, this place seems like your run-of-the-mill spooky mansion, kinda run down and seemingly abandoned, and filled with void scent. What if I told you there was a dark secret lying within the halls? A tragic tale of a woman clinging to her beauty, becoming so obsessed with vanity that she's driven mad. This is the tale of Lady Amendine. You see, Lady Amendine wasn't only beautiful, some say she was beauty. She used all sorts of facial creams and ointments to preserve her beauty as she grew older, but rumors eventually spread that she went to much greater lengths. You see, Lady Amendine's face was tragically deformed from damage due to the calamity. Thus, she tried more aggressive forms of restoring her beauty. One rumor spread, saying that she was living with virgins, bathing in their blood to restore her beauty. When she discovered the blood of the machinist players wasn't enough, she resorted to kidnapping young women around Gridania, cutting their faces off, among other things. Eventually, Lady Amendine made a pact with the Voidsent, who promised to return her beauty, which turned her into a Voidsent herself. Thus enters the player, who eventually slays the lady and puts her beautifully twisted soul to rest, and leaving the manor in the hands of the Voidsent. That's what the hard version of the dungeon's about. Throughout the Shadowbringers MSQ, it's shown that the people of Yulmore have a diet that includes one very interesting food, Meol. While on the surface it appears to just be bread, it's revealed later on that Meol is actually made out of sin eaters. Why does that matter? Well, considering that Sin Eaters were once people, players realized that Yulmorians had been oblivious to the fact that they were eating people. What's worse is those who consumed a lot of Meol were susceptible to Vothri's ability to control Sin Eaters. This was honestly the most disturbing thing to me from that entire expansion. Either that or your mom. The most disturbing thing in Final Fantasy XIV is also the most common thing in the game. It plagues every last bit of it. Every crack, every crevice. From city-states to the obscure, unused areas of the wild. By far, the most disturbing thing in Final Fantasy XIV is the players. Specifically the ones with bad glams, but don't worry, I have a solution in this video here.